So when people bought tickets for The Last Jedi, they thought they were getting another classic Star Wars movie, a story with heroes, villains, and maybe some nostalgia. Instead, Rian Johnson decided to throw out decades of setup. The big twist was that Rey's parents are nobodies. After The Force Awakens built her up as possibly a Skywalker or Kenobi, fans got told she's just a random girl with no legacy. On top of that, Luke Skywalker wasn't the wise mentor everyone imagined.
Master Yoda. Young Skywalker.
Instead, he's bitter, reclusive, and tosses his lightsaber away like a joke. Fans felt like it mocked the very foundation of the series. Some even walked out during the infamous casino subplot, which felt more like a lecture on capitalism than space adventure. The reaction was brutal. Box office numbers dropped compared to The Force Awakens, and the fanbase split in half. The takeaway was simple: changing expectations doesn't always mean improving a story.
Ma said this master codebreaker would have a red plum bloom on his lapel. Let's find him and get out of here.
Charlie's Angels. The original Charlie's Angels movies were campy, over-the-top fun. The 2019 reboot, though, leaned heavily into a men are the problem theme that dominated nearly every plot beat. The twist comes when the movie reveals that not just one bad guy, but basically every man in power is corrupt, manipulative, or evil.
Give us the rings!
Instead of being empowering, audiences felt like it painted with way too broad a brush. What should have been a lighthearted spy adventure turned into a lecture. The film cost around $48 million to make, but barely scraped $8 million on its opening weekend. Critics said the messaging overshadowed the entertainment, and fans tuned out fast. It's a reminder: audiences come for escapism, not finger-pointing. By the halfway mark, people weren't laughing with the movie. They were walking out of it. Terminator: Dark Fate. When trailers dropped, fans were hyped. James Cameron was back, Linda Hamilton was back, Arnold was back, but 5 minutes in, the movie dropped a bomb that sent fans out of theaters. John Connor, the very heart of the entire saga, gets killed by a random Terminator. Just like that, decades of storytelling about the future savior of humanity were erased. The film then pivots to say, don't worry, someone else this time, a young woman, is the real chosen one. Now, that could have worked if done carefully, but wiping out John in such a careless way felt disrespectful. Many longtime fans said they couldn't enjoy the rest of the movie knowing the original story they grew up with was invalidated, and the numbers prove it. Dark Fate made less than half of what Terminator 2 did back in the early 90s. Nostalgia can carry a franchise far, but once you betray the core story, people check out. Ocean's 8. When Ocean's 8 was announced, people thought, cool, another slick heist flick. But the real hook wasn't the plot, it was the cast.
3, 2, 1.
Instead of George Clooney and his crew, this time it was an all-female lineup, and that twist became the entire selling point. Now here's the problem: instead of feeling like a fresh take with real stakes, the movie leaned too hard on the "look, it's women now" angle. It wasn't that audiences didn't want women in the lead, it's that the studio made the gender swap the whole story. You could almost feel the marketing team patting themselves on the back for being progressive, while the actual heist plot took a back seat. The result was that fans compared it directly to the Clooney-led trilogy and found it flatter, less clever, and honestly, kind of hollow. It did okay at the box office, but most people walked away. It's a perfect example of how a so-called woke twist can backfire when it feels more like a gimmick than a story anyone asked for. Lightyear. When Disney announced Lightyear, people expected a fun backstory to the Buzz Lightyear toy they loved in Toy Story. But instead, the movie got bogged down in a plot that felt more like a lecture.
I won't. I don't know when it happened, but I seem to have gone and gotten very old.
The big twist, Zurg, who fans knew as Buzz's father from Toy Story 2, is actually an older, alternate version of Buzz himself. It wasn't shocking, it was confusing. On top of that, the film included a blink-and-you'll-miss-it same-sex kiss that became the center of its marketing campaign. Disney leaned into the controversy.
In Muslim-controlled countries, including Indonesia, Malaysia, and most of the Middle East, 14 nations have already banned.
But many parents felt it was more about making headlines than telling a good story. The backlash was immediate. The movie flopped in theaters, making only a fraction of what Pixar films usually do. Instead of a beloved addition to the Toy Story universe, Lightyear became the poster child for how forcing a message can overshadow the fun of a franchise. Thor: Love and Thunder. Marvel promised fans an epic return for Thor, but instead they delivered a comedy sketch stretched into a feature film. The big twist was Natalie Portman's Jane Foster picking up the hammer to become the new Thor. On paper, it sounded bold.
As the one and only Thor.
In reality, it came off like Marvel forcing identity politics into a character arc instead of earning it through story. Chris Hemsworth's Thor, once a commanding figure, was reduced to the punchline of his own franchise.
It's the Asgardian shake into the snake that you cannot trust.
Audiences were split between laughing at the movie and cringing at how far it strayed from the original tone. The box office numbers looked fine on the surface, but the fallout was clear. Fans stopped trusting Marvel to deliver serious storytelling. Instead of building hype for Phase 5, Love and Thunder became a warning sign that when studios prioritize making a statement over strong writing, even superheroes start to look weak. She-Hulk Attorney at Law. This show had Marvel fans bailing out after just a couple of episodes. The premise was promising, Hulk's cousin gaining powers and balancing superhero duty with her law career. The execution turned into a meta-satire that constantly took shots at its own audience. Entire episodes revolved around mocking so-called toxic fanboys and breaking the fourth wall to call out critics before they even said anything.
Why don't we just do things our own way?
Instead of winning fans over with smart storytelling, it leaned so heavily on self-awareness that it became unwatchable. By the finale, when She-Hulk literally rewrote her own ending through Marvel's AI mascot, the message was clear. The show cared more about dunking on viewers than telling a story. It became a textbook case of how woke twists can backfire, driving away the very fan base that kept the franchise alive. Batwoman. When Batwoman hit the CW, it should have been a slam dunk. Gotham City, Batman's shadow, and a chance to introduce a fresh hero, that's fertile ground for good storytelling. Instead, it quickly became one of the most infamous examples of how woke messaging can sink a show before it even finds its legs. From the very first trailer, the series seemed more interested in telling viewers what to think than in telling an actual story. Ruby Rose's Batwoman wasn't written as a layered, compelling character, she was written as a statement. One of the most quoted lines summed it up: "I'm not going to let a man take credit for a woman's work." The problem wasn't the sentiment itself, but how forced it felt. It wasn't clever, and it felt like the writers wanted to wag a finger at the audience instead of drawing them in.
Curiouser and curiouser.
What do you want?
I need you to send your father a message.
And people tuned out fast. Ratings dropped hard after the first season, and by season 2, the show felt like it was limping along, carried more by media buzz than actual fan support. By the time it ended, nobody was surprised. It wasn't that audiences weren't ready for a female lead in Gotham. They just weren't interested in a show that forgot the golden rule of comic book adaptations: story first, message second. Batwoman proved that you can't scold people into caring about your characters.